Hi everyone and welcome back. Today it's going to be poems with Miss Tania. So April is the month where we celebrate poems. So during the month of April, what I would do is I would display poem books in the library and then maybe put some on the wall. And for reading time, I would read poems. So I decided to make a poem video. And I decided to bring this off the shelf. It's called Everything on Top, and it's by Shel Silverstein. So I'm going to read a few poems from this one. So hopefully you guys like it. So because this book is called Everything on Top, I will read the poem that is called Everything on Top. And take a look at the picture for a bit. And let's get started. Everything on top. I asked for a hot dog with everything on top, and that was my big mistake, 'cause it came with a parrot, a bee in a bonnet, a wristwatch, a wrench, and a rake. It came with a goldfish, a flag, and a fiddle, a frog, and a front porch swing, and a mouse in a mask. That's the last time I ask for a hot dog with everything. The next poem I'm going to read is called Stubbornness. And here are the pictures. It's a donkey and a monkey. So it's been a while since I read this one, so let's give it a go. There was a funky donkey and a spunky monkey. They were sitting by the railroad track. Said the funky donkey to the spunky monkey, "I'm going off to somewhere and I won't be back," said the spunky monkey to the funky donkey. "If you wait for a minute or two, I'll go say goodbye to the frivolous fly, and I'll come along with you," said the spunky monkey to the funky donkey. "This road looks long and wide, so if you'll just pick me up and carry me a while, I'd sure be much obliged," said the funky donkey to the spunky monkey. "I was going to ask the same of you, so we'd better just wait till we get it straight as to who's gonna carry who. Now the funky donkey, he ain't going nowhere 'less somebody carries him, and the spunky monkey won't carry no donkey, so their future's looking dim." And they were still sitting back by that railroad track. They'll be there till the moon turns blue, but they ain't gonna ride, 'cause they just can't decide as to who's gonna carry who. I have these certain bookmarks, certain poems bookmarked, but can't really remember why. So that's kind of why I picked the ones that I'm reading to you guys. All right, so the next one is called Growing Up. Mix a grunt and a grumble, a sneer and a frown, and what do you have? Why, old Mr. Brown, the crabbiest man in all whole darn town. We all called him Grown-up Brown. For years each girl and boy and pup heard, grow up, oh, grow up." He'd say, "Why don't you be polite? Why must you shout and fuss and fight? Why can't you keep dirt off your shoes? Why can't you remember to wipe your nose? Why must you always make such noise? Why don't you go pick up your toys? Why do you hate to wash your hands? Why are your shoes all filled with sand? Why must you shout when I'm lying down? Why don't you grow up?" Grumped Grow Up Brown. One day we said to Grow Up Brown, "Hey, why don't you try growing down? Why don't you crawl on your knees? Why don't you try climbing trees? Why don't you bang on a tin can drum? Why don't you chew some bubble gum? Why don't you play kick the can? Why don't you not wash your hands? Why don't you join the baseball team? Why don't you jump and yell and scream? Why don't you try skipping stones? Why don't you eat ice cream cones? Why don't you cry when you feel sad? Why don't you cuddle with your dad? Why don't you have weenie roast? Why don't you believe in ghosts? Why don't you have pillow fights? Why don't you sleep with your teddy at night? Why don't you swing from monkey bars? Why don't you wish on falling stars? Why don't you run in a three-legged race? Why don't you make weirdy faces? Why don't you smile, grow up brown? Why don't you try growing down? Then grow up brown. He scrunched and frowned and scratched his head and walked around. And finally he said with a helpless sound, maybe I will try growing down. So Grow Up Brown began to sing and started doing silly things. He started making weirdy faces and came in first in the three-legged races. All day he swung from the monkey bars. All night he'd lie and count the stars. He tooted horns, he banged on drums. He spent $20 on bubble gum. He went to all the weenie roasts, and once he thought he saw a ghost. He got to be great at pillow fights and went to sleep with his teddy at night. He flew a kite, he kicked a can, he rubbed some dirt upon his hands. He drew some pictures, threw some stones, ate 47 ice cream cones. He got some sand between his toes, got a loose tooth and a bloody nose. He got a dog, they rolled in the mud. He imitated Elmer Fudd. He climbed the roof, though no one asked. He broke his wrist, he wore a cast. He rolled down hills, he climbed up trees. He scuffed his elbows and skinned his knees. When they said no, he spit and screamed. He cried when he was feeling sad and went and cuddled with his dad. He wore a hat that didn't fit. He learned just how far he could spit. He learned to wrestle and get tickled. He sucked his thumb. He belched and giggled. He got his trousers torn and stained. He ran out barefoot in the rain, shouting to all the folks in town, it's much more fun, this growing down. Sometimes, even when you're an adult, you have the urge to do silly things. Let me see. I think we have time for one more poem. So let me read A Mouse in the House. Oh, a mouse in this house. So here it is. This is the pictures for that poem. Okay, so let's get started. Last poem. A Mouse in This House. There's a mouse in this house, said Uncle Ben, as he peeked down a hole in the floor. There's a mouse in this house, he said again, as he pushed aside the chest of drawers. There's a mouse in the house, he cried once more, as he ripped down the drapes in the hall and pulled up the boards in the kitchen floor and hammered a hole in the dining room wall. He yanked all the pictures right off their hooks, pushed over the bookcase and tore through books. A mouse, he rasped as he searched around. In this house, he gasped as a beam came down. He dug through the closets, he poked through the trash. He overheard ceiling fan fell with a crash. He pried up the tiles, he chopped up the house. He was sure that he saw a mouse's nose. He jerked all the bathroom drain pipes out, unscrewed all the faucets, and looked up the spouts. Is that a switch or a mouse's ear? Down came the dining room chandelier. A mouse in this house, he heard him shout as he got his chainsaw out. He sawed through the baseboards, he sawed through the struts, he poked through the plaster, and he sliced and he cut. All the electrical wires that ran through the house, they did look a little bit like the tail of a mouse. He tore down the banisters and pulled up the nails. A mouse can hide down under banister rails. He sliced through the carpet, he ripped up the stairs. He sawed through the table and splintered the chairs. Now what was that on the windowsill? He got out his hydraulic drill. He crack went the windows, zip went the screens, Down fell the ceiling, down came the beams. He tore up the cement and the stone cellar too. He smashed in the fireplace and looked up the flue. Dug out the fountain from under the house. Mutterin' something 'bout some lousy mouse. Yanking the hinges right off the doors, bashing down rafters and 2x4s. And then, as the last of the walls caved in, a small gray tail flicked out of sight, right past the shoe of Uncle Ben. "Aha," he whispered. "I was right." All of that destroying his house for a little mouse. All right. I hope you guys like the poems. I might do one more video this week with poems from another book that I think I have downstairs. And I believe it's also by Shel Silverstein. So I hope you guys liked it. And I will see you soon. Bye for now.